Hey YouTube, hope you're doing good. This is Rob doing some reaction videos. Again, I wanted to let you guys know that we have a podcast on my channel called KC Music Talk. Go check those out. I've done 60 some interviews with different musicians around town talking about a whole bunch of different kinds of topics. So we get off into teaching and different helpful hints for practice tips and dealing with bandmates and how to get along and all sorts of different topics. So go check that out. We're talking about different genres of music and eras, and so there's a lot of interesting stuff on there. So go check that out. And so on this one, we're talking about Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit. So obviously, Nirvana was a huge band in the 90s. They were from Seattle, I believe, one of those big, I think Jane's Addiction, Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots. There's a bunch of bands there in the 90s that came out from Seattle, and this is one of the biggest songs from the 90s. I mean, really was revolutionary. And so we came off of a lot of heavier stuff, from the 80s, like the Metallicas. And then we were also coming off of kind of that pop rock, hair band kind of stuff too, with the glam rock and David Bowie and that, that kind of thing. So this was so different. I mean, you have no idea what happened with these like long sleeve flannel shirts. That was like a huge thing in the 90s, and definitely this screw everybody kind of stuff. And one thing I will say is that nowadays we have a lot of the kind of Selena Gomez, Justin Bieber kind of music. And I heard this the other day that I thought was really interesting. They were talking about that. So in the 50s, you had talking about the youth, and they had this thing to latch on to. And so like in the 50s, it was rock music. In the 60s, it was the kind of the hippie culture. In the 70s and 80s, it was like punk music. In the 90s, it was like Marilyn Manson, Nirvana, and they had this kind of rebellious thing. Well, one thing that's tough right now is that nowadays, what do kids have music-wise that's really like rebellious like this? Well, they're kind of missing something, and I think there's kind of this natural process there, and it's possible that a lot of youth have been using kind of letting politics be their outlet there of rebelliousness. So but this was one of the last times in the 90s where we had kind of this music that was able to help us kind of understand through that whole process of rebellion and how do we come to terms with that as young people. So anyway, so here's a little bit of Nirvana. It Smells Like Teen Spirit, just a huge song in the 90s. What's up with the janitor? Yeah, he's all throughout the video. I like the stops right up here. So lots of stuff going on there to talk about. So one thing I think is funny, but don't even pretend that you know everything that he just said, right? Like that's what's been so funny with rock music is like when you listen to like musicals or something, like you can tell everything, or pop music, you can tell every single word they're saying. I mean, and that's what kind of blew me away about rock is that to understand it, you don't even have to really even hardly care what they're saying. It's just that they're singing, and that's obviously kind of part of the whole mystique of it. Is it doesn't even matter. It's more about the feeling and the groove and another thing you can notice is that, again, the premise of the song is that you have all of these kids that are just going through the status quo, right? That all of these kids are, for example, sitting there in assemblies, and you can tell as he goes along how much crazier and crazier it gets, and kind of urging everybody to just turn the whole thing over, turn it on its head. I wonder if one of his ideas is like, let's literally just stop it. Let's literally start completely over, because all this stuff is silly, is what I think he's trying to get out of this whole movement and his whole vibe of life. Turn over all these old ways of doing things. Now they're going to crazier. You'll notice guitar solo. And you're noticing what he's doing there is he's doing the melody, right? He didn't come up with a new solo there. He just played the melody on his guitar, and it sounds great. It's a great choice there. Now listen to that held out guitar distortion there. I noticed this when they were talking about the making of this video. He holds out this guitar distortion, and listen to the sound it starts making as he holds it out. He got some really great distortion out of it. So let me back that up. You'll hear it goes for 20 seconds. Hear that? It's still going. Off. Right? That's a really crazy sound. I mean, that sounded really good for him to hold that distortion there and have that extra little layer on top of that. And that's really, really cool effect. And I think the producer, the engineer did that, who was making their album. That's some really cool sounding distortion he's getting. And now everybody starts going nuts. Feel stupid. He's saying a denial, I think he's saying there. That's a creepy picture right there. Wow. So that is, just a really super famous song. Probably one of the top 10 most played songs of the 90s for sure. And really simple too. And that's like the whole song basically. It just repeats that whole thing. And it's really the energy, right? The energy of the song is really insane. And this grungy guitar sound too, because what happened was we had kind of, not grungy, but we had a very natural sound in the 90s or in the 70s, and then you got over the 80s and people experimented a lot with the electronic sounds, and then got back to the 90s and people kind of retroed a little bit back to some of the versions of some of the things that they were doing in the 70s. And I consider that sound, it's obviously electronic in the sense that it's a distortion, but I consider it a more natural sounding distortion than some of the 80s stuff. So just revolutionary sound. I mean, nobody had ever heard anything like that when it came out. Now it doesn't sound so crazy, but that was really new age to hear someone play like that. So now to the kind of mood of this band, definitely there was a really huge sadness with Kurt Cobain. He really had huge problems with heroin and drugs and depression. And I think he had a really bad home life too. I think I remember that he wasn't in foster care, I think, but he was at somebody else's house, I believe, like other people raised him. And so there was a huge sadness and longing in him. And again, I've talked about this before, and some people won't agree with me on this, but sometimes we want to idolize people like this guy because they were so artistic and they saw something that everybody else saw. And I've always had this theory about nobody can have everything perfect. Nobody can have complete 100% organization and 100% artistic ability and 100% compassion, but 100% IQ. And there's all these like categories in life, and nobody has everything. And so everybody kind of loses something. And so the guys like this, he, like I was talking about with the flannel shirts and everything, that everybody really looked up to him, especially younger kids in high school. I mean, this was right when middle school and high school for me. And, there's this comes with kind of this huge personal or this huge responsibility that you have when you're somebody, that is basically teaching people's kids. They look up to him. And it's really rough when you go, arguably kill yourself. I've heard that, Courtney did it. Courtney Love had something to do with it. But even if she didn't, let's take a different example. Let's say he did, have it so bad that he did need to kill himself. You gotta, you at some point you kind of gotta go find help. You gotta go. And after he killed himself, a lot of other people, the suicide epidemic rose, I believe, after Kurt Cobain killed himself, because he was in this mode of kind of screw everything. I feel stupid, and I think what he was implying is that everything is stupid. Life is stupid. So screw that, screw everybody. I'm going to check out. I'm going to quit. I'm going to, and it's tough. I mean, that's a tough thing to go through, and all of us feel that way sometimes. And, I have a different opinion about this band as I've gotten older, but the song itself is awesome, and some of the songs they did, and I think some of the stuff they're trying to portray is really necessary. Like I said, they go through this normal phase of rebellion as a kid, but you just have to keep remembering that you have this responsibility, if you're going to be a role model, to kind of be a role model for the right things. And so, yeah, I don't really know what else to say on that. That's kind of my opinion looking back on this band now. And really revolutionary. I mean, the attitude and the kind of pot smoking, screw you, darkness that had to do with this band. And it was really, really interesting. And a lot of people related to how Kurt Cobain was feeling. And I just wish he probably would have tried to get help. And I mean, he just left us too early. And did he kind of quit on us? it's kind of something to just kind of throw around your head of how great he was. Well, he quit, you know. So, you know, it's just something to kind of think about, a different perspective on some of these bands and some of these people, the Jim Morrisons, the Janis Joplins. You know, we talked about the Blind Melon guy a couple minutes ago, overdosing, you know. So anyway, that was interesting or not, there you go. So it's a little bit interesting, hopefully interesting take on Nirvana. So I will talk to you guys later. Have a great day. See ya.